Welcome back to Happy Health Hour. And with me this week on Happy Health Hour is Nurse Linda. Hi, Nurse Linda. How are you doing?
I'm great.
And we have Dr. M. Dr. M, all well with you?
Everything is great.
And Dr. B, how are you?
I'm great today.
Okay, well, I'm not sure we'll end the show that way because this week we're talking about our kids are not well. How can we help them? Because I can imagine there may be different opinions on this, and I might chime in with a couple of opinions on this one as well. But Dr. M, I'm going to start with you because really what we're doing in this show is we're consolidating what we've talked about in other shows. We're talking about ultra processed foods. We're talking about immunity debt. We're talking about cell phones and other devices, the wireless problem, the electromagnetic problem. We're bringing all of that in. But perhaps I can ask you to sort of kick us off by talking about the rise in things like autism over the last 100, 200 years and the rise of other issues in children, just to really frame the difficulty and the huge problems we have at the moment.
Yeah, that's a topic that is at this point it's one hot one, and it's also very controversial. It has raised not only eyebrows, but it has raised hell in many places. Not the least of which to mention is the parents who have to endure the painful process of knowing that a child of theirs has some type of disturbance in their brain, their nervous system, will not be able to talk properly, will not be able to interact in a so-called normal way, perhaps may never be able to have a family of their own, perhaps not even be able to be continent of their excrement. It's just it's a really uncomfortable topic, and the causes they run far and deep. But in my position as a clinician and as a scientist, I've had to look at a lot of data, a lot of stuff over these years, and coming to conclusions about potential or possible causes or probable causes. That is kind of multifactorial. But what's come to light in the past number of years is probably a combination of what these children are subject to from birth or even pre-birth in utero. It could be anything from what the mother and or father have taken in that could have disturbed their child. Again, controversial. Chemicals, exposures, and so on. Mothers and fathers who perhaps were substance abusers or took drugs and so forth during their pregnancy. How could that have impacted a child's brain? And mother after birth, giving birth, and then a child subject to a number of foreign substances, and we call those vaccines. That is a very controversial subject, and it's a very uncomfortable subject, but there's a lot of evidence now that's coming in, and there are a lot of changes that are being made in that whole realm of injecting little children, infants, newborns with certain things. Like, for instance, I'll just bring up the hepatitis B vaccine, and then which is really that is disturbing, because hepatitis B is generally contracted by sexual contact and or some contamination of blood. So unless the mother is hepatitis B positive, there really shouldn't be any indication for a hepatitis B vaccine for a newborn. And a lot of people are seeing that after that, and some of the other injections, that their children are not reaching, they don't reach certain milestones. After they've met milestones, they suddenly stop. After, say, a number of injections, which is often done at the same time, a newborn, few weeks old, few months old, they get several injections, and things change. Brain changes. It's been seen, it's been shown, we have the data, but again, it remains that well, we can't really talk about this because of the vaccine industry. Not only that, but the intake of ultra-processed foods, which we've touched upon. The ultra-processed food industry is one that I think is definitely transformative. That is, it's transforming humans into non-humans, as far as I'm concerned. Brain activity is affected by what we ingest. You know, if we take in artificial things, it's going to affect our cognition, our ability to form, thoughts, to put two and two together. So there's a lot of very bad chemistry that's coming from the ultra-processed food industry. And then we have artificial sweeteners included into these things. I mean, if you go to any market, grocery store, as you're checking out, you'll see a whole line of all of these candies and gums and so forth. They're full of artificial things. And what child wouldn't want that? So there's a whole mess of chemistry there that should never be given, and again, in my opinion, it should never be given to a child. A basic piece of gum, when I was a child, it had sugar in it. It was called Bazooka, I believe, and we used to eat Bazooka gum, really without too much consequence, other than maybe a few cavities. But now we have to worry about the chemicals, the other chemicals in gum that are actually brain-altering chemicals. There's all sorts of chemistry in there, and I can't begin to tell you. I mean, starting with artificial sweeteners, but there's dyes, and there are other things that preserve and are stabilizing and make this softer and sweeter and more colorful. These are the things that are affecting our kids' brains. And onto the electromagnetic field status, or the that which we talked about in the last discussion, the cell phones. To have a very small child with a cell phone is like having them hold dynamite in their hand, because it's going to cause an explosion in the brain. Any cellular technology next to a growing child, I mean, if they're tiny, they're very small, even a mother holding a cell phone near the child while she's doing something, holding the child, that is entering the child's brain. And then as they grow up a little bit, mom or dad may give the child a cell phone. That's not a smart thing to do. You don't give an infant or a toddler a cell phone. It is, again, a microwave technology. It is pulsating at this child, and many of them, where are they putting it? In their mouth, right into the brain, right intracranial. It's just wrong. And so these are some of the biggest challenges that we have that are affecting our children. And when they do get older, then it becomes an addiction. And now you have an adolescent teenager who's addicted to this stuff, which is now affecting their nervous system and the rest of their body. And they are now becoming essentially, discombobulated and altered because of this whole industry, of cellular technology. So these are some of the big issues that we have with our children, and they're not doing well. So we got to help them.
So thank you, Dr. Him. As ever, a great introduction, succinct introduction to the problem. Nurse Linda, I wonder, do you share the same views as Dr. M on this in terms of the really negative picture that's been painted? And what are your views?
Well, first of all, I have an autistic son. Um, and what happens with him, he's 30, he'll be 30. If I let him live, he'll be 38 on February 16th. That's if I let him live. But I would say emotionally and psychologically, he's probably somewhere between the age of 10 and 12. He lives on his own, but he has no executive function. He can't tell you the months in order. He can't tell you what day it is. He can tell you that it is day and it is night. So these are the things that affect whether or not he can function in society. This is a kid who wants to get married and have children. He wants to have a profession. He can't get anywhere on time because that's part of executive function and he doesn't have it. I have to call him 4 times to get him someplace when he has to be there on time. So I have done extensive research with this kid. I knew there was something wrong with him when he was 2.
Mm.
Now, he was corded at birth. What does that mean? It means that in utero, when I was in labor and I was giving birth to him, the cord was wrapped around his neck. Then the doctor was not there. If the nurses had not been there, I don't know that he would have survived, and I think the damage would have been worse. He also has a genetic connection to this problem, and genetics cannot be ruled out with this. He's got a genetic connection with his dad's family, possibly with my dad, because who knows. There are a lot of things that could have caused this with him, but I knew when he was 2 that there was something wrong, and I had him with very expensive psychologists and psychiatrists at a very young age. He learned to read, missing 7 letters in the alphabet. He was in special ed his entire life. I had teachers who created special programs for him and then didn't follow them. And when I found that out, those teachers no longer were working. Because this was when Asperger's syndrome in the DSM-4 was not considered to be part of the autism spectrum. I believe, as my husband does, and he'll probably say something about this as well, I believe that part of the uptick in the number of cases that we're seeing now is the change in the DSM-4 to the DSM-5, where many of these things are now considered to be on the spectrum that weren't
Okay.
before.
So, Linda, I'm going to ask you to explain that in a way that people will understand it, because there'll be thousands of people who are listening who do not understand what DSM is and the spectrum, and you need to use not sort of slightly different language vocabulary to make sure everybody's got that.
I'm used to teaching doctors, so I apologize. So the DSM-4 was, because it's been uptick to the DSM-5 in 2015, that is the guidelines, the manual for psychiatry. In it gives all of the different diagnoses and the diagnostics that lead you to the diagnoses and the treatment modalities for it. So it's basically the Bible for psychiatry. The DSM-4 was revised to become the DSM-5 in 2015, I think it was. Might have been later. But before that happened, Asperger's syndrome, which is what my son was diagnosed with, was a separate thing. And what we in that family of people who unfortunately are dealing with people, children and adults, with that particular issue, we were told if you've met one, you've met one, because the way it works is there are a tremendous number of things, behaviors and things that these people could or could not have, and then the severity level changes. So there are so many different potential combinations that maybe somewhere in the world there are 2 that are alike, but no 2 can be alike. It was very difficult to diagnose, and he was misdiagnosed until he was 17 and a half years old.
So, Linda, let me ask you a follow-up question. So, first of all, thank you for sharing that story, because that's never easy. So I really appreciate, all of us really appreciate you sharing that story. Is it your belief, and why is it your belief that the numbers of kids with autism and other things has gone up in the 100 years, or is it just that it's being more diagnosed better?
I think it's a combination of both. Because 150 years ago, even 30 years ago, I mean, he fell through the cracks. Many of them fall through the cracks. It's an educational process. It's still going on today. We don't know all the causes. And there's probably an alphabet soup of causes, and each one is individual. Could vaccines do it? I'm sure some of them could. Some of them are really not necessary at that early an age. But with the outbreaks of measles and all these other things, polio, these other things that are coming back because we are not vaccinating, that's an issue as well. I can't say that I'm an anti-vaxxer, because I'm not. But there has to be a rhyme and a reason and thought behind what you give and when you give it. There are so many different factors that cause these issues in the brain that even after spending 37 and a half years trying to figure out what the heck with this one kid, I don't know how anybody could say, yes, I can pinpoint that's what it was, that's what caused it, and this is how we're going to treat it. No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you, Linda, for sharing that. So, Dr. B, in your experience, in your research, in what you've read, have these sort of diseases and ailments increased over the last 100 years? And can it purely be just a better diagnosis, or is there something else at play? Is it cell phones, ultra processed foods, lack of social cohesion, the parents' behavior changing? Is it all these things have got worse, or is it just diagnosis? What's your view and research on this?
Well, it's a combination thereof. So let's talk about where it is now. In 2025, 1 in 31 children in the United States was considered to fall on the autism spectrum.
One in how many? 1 in 30?
1 in 31
Wow.
in 2025. Those are
Okay.
statistics that just came out recently.
Mhm.
A large part of that is the way the diagnosis has come about. So we no longer talk about a number of different entities, and Linda brought up Asperger's being one of them. Many of them have been collapsed into what we call the autism spectrum. So
Okay.
everybody who was outside of the autism spectrum before is now autistic.
Okay.
That was a big bump. But I would suggest too that the 1 in 31, and this is in the United States, we have a higher incidence than anywhere else in the world. Part of that is because we have more diagnostic acuity
Yeah.
in our country,
Yeah.
and we are more sensitive to make the diagnosis of autism in our country.
Yeah.
So thus said, yes, a large part of it has been, in my opinion, because of the way we diagnose autism, because autism really is a spectrum of processes and diseases that are all lumped into one category. And perhaps 100 or 200 years from now, we'll be able to sift some back out and say, well, this is autism caused by X, and this is autism caused by Y. These things we know. There's a very strong genetic component to autism. That's number one. We know that women who've had complications at birth have a higher incidence of autism. We know women who had in utero infections while they were pregnant have a higher incidence of autism. We know those three categorically are involved. The other elements we suspect, we've looked at, highly controversial. There is some evidence to suggest maybe they do, and evidence to suggest maybe they aren't involved. So the jury's still out on a lot of those things, and we can't say it doesn't. So should we be more careful? Of course. We should always be more careful if we don't know if it does or doesn't.
Mm.
Thus said, vaccines save lives. We know that. And so we can't categorically say, oh, let's do away with all vaccines. We make them as safe as we possibly can, and then try to find out if there is anything that can definitively prove that the vaccines, or a specific vaccine, because not all vaccines are made the same, cause these problems. Once you have the problem diagnosed, then what do we do with the people? So you've asked a very specific question to me. Do I believe it's an increase, or do I believe it's an increase in diagnosis? So increase in diagnosis plays a huge part, and it's hard to sift out how much of that increased part it plays versus, yeah, we are seeing more. I suspect we are seeing more, not only because we're diagnosing more, but because of processed foods, because of a lot of ways we've brought these children up, and the changes we've made in our environment just from my own youth. The kinds of processed foods, every cereal that was put out on the market was highly processed with sugar and all kinds of different chemicals to make it more tasty. The food companies have put a lot of additives into foods that, in order for better storage, longer storage, for better tasting, and actually to make some certain foods addictive, so that once you eat something, you're going to want more. And all of those are, as Dr. Marina said, are artificial substances. So I'd be hard pressed to say that it isn't affecting our brains and leading to greater incidence of autism. How much proof do we have or need? It needs to be really looked at much more closely. We do not know everything there is to know, so we should always err on the side of caution, and that's always my message: err on the side of caution. And we have not erred on the side of caution. We have gone straight through everything and added technology with the microwaves and processed foods and all kinds of changes in our environment. And nobody looked at the consequences. And that's where we are today. So I believe that has led to higher incidence of autism that goes above and beyond what you can account for with just the change in diagnoses.
Yeah, I think that's the I was looking for you to make a very specific, definitive comment on that. Dr. M, last word to you on this topic. It's a topic that's evolving. There's more evidence coming out. Acknowledging, let's say, I think you're all acknowledging the diagnostic capability in the United States is probably better than anywhere else in the world. So it's gone up because of that. But there's a sense, isn't there, that things are worse. There's a sense. Now that's not that's more heuristic than research based, but there's an absolute sense that there are the environment, the behaviors, thought processes, everything is a little bit worse, or significantly worse than it was 50 years ago.
Without question. Absolutely.
I would like you to speak to that. I think there's a slight difference of opinion between you guys on the vaccine element, but I think you're certainly aligned on the element which is there's diagnostic capability that's improved, but also there are other things like technology, what electromagnetic technology, ultra processed foods, which are affecting kids. I tell you from my own, and then I'm going to ask you to fill the comment on this from my own perspective as an educator. I've been a professor, a dean, a provost. I've been in education for a long time, and I have noticed that my attention is deficit, and I've noticed over time that the attention of most students and adults isn't where it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. So something is at play which is nothing to do with diagnostic issues. There's been an increase of attention deficit disorder. And I don't believe that that is purely diagnostic. I think I wanted to just give that context to you before asking you to speak for the final few moments about your views about there's obviously something is some element is diagnostic and some element is environment. And, we talked about epigenetics a few weeks ago, and we're going to talk about it again in a few weeks. Well, I know it's hard, but could you give some percentages to that, or some, what part is diagnostic and what part is epigenetic, and what's please help us.
This is not a topic that we can sum up in just a few moments, but environmental, epigenetic, let's just put it that way. Anything outside of the gene is where it's at. Genetics, it plays its role, but we can modify our genes. We can make things better, or we can make things worse, or we can have a manifestation. There are people who have genetic programming. They're born with certain propensity for something and never develop it. Okay, so again, that speaks loudly for the environment that the person is in and what is influencing their little program stuff that's in there. We don't know how this all came about. It's all, as we say, of divine, intervention and or creation. But I'll say that environmental is really key in how all of people are turning out. What you're inhaling, what you're bringing in thought-wise, what you're experiencing, in everyday life. Kids also traumatized by whatever happened when they were in mom's belly. You have trauma that a woman can experience as a pregnant, gravid woman who can impact her fetus. Okay. So that's really profound. The baby to come, the fetus developing, is taking in mom's energy and dad's and the environments. It's not like we're in something where we're not attached. We're all connected. So the influence of the environmental, everything that's going on, the happenings, can be affecting a growing human being. And then that human being coming out into the environment is going to be exposed to endless numbers of different elements. And it could be anything from a drug to a food that doesn't belong in their body, and they react to it, and then they become allergic, or it could be formula. If one is not breastfed, you go to the formula thing. I even have a case where the mother it was documented, the mother was drinking diet soda during her pregnancy and during her breastfeeding time. She was drinking a diet soda that had a certain substance called aspartame in it. And this child was about to experience seizures and did. This was just like, bang, it just happened. And that kind of scenario was recorded in a book called aspartame disease. I read it. And so that was one example. There were other examples of how children were coming up with these seizure things. And there was an uptick in seizure problems, neurologic problems with these artificial sweeteners that mother was ingesting or the child. So we have so many things that we're bombarded with before and after birth. And once a child gets going, it is anything and everything that can affect them. And fortunately, our bodies in general come out doing fairly well in spite of all of that. The environment, which can be very adversary and do nasty things to us, we come out because we're amazing as human beings. And that's what I think that is really remarkable. And I'm always in awe of our abilities to come back and to bounce back, even in the face of some things that are devastating, like Linda experienced with her son. He was, hypoxic, had low oxygen to his brain, but here he is 37 years later, he's functioning, albeit he has his limitations, but he's brilliant. It's just that we have to take everything into consideration. If a child takes ill, we really need to look at their environment. What are they eating? What have they done? What has happened to them? How could we fix it? And there are many ways that we can use to intervene, fortunately. And especially in the natural realm, we've got a lot of things that won't harm them, and we can help a lot of kids grow up better.
Dr. M, that's, I think, that positive comment is a great way to leave this week's show. I want to say thank you and Dr. B, but I particularly want to thank Linda for sharing a very personal story to sort of really illustrate the problem that we've got. Linda, from all of us, we thank you. We thank you so much, and we wish you and your son well and happiness. It's goodbye from me this week, and it's goodbye from Nurse Linda, Dr. B, and Dr. M. And we welcome back Dr. P next week. Hopefully it's not fake. It's not a fake story. Hopefully he is back next week, and we look forward to seeing him next week. Will all three of you join me in welcoming Dr. P back next week?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay, we will see you then. Okay, from me, it's goodbye. Thank you.